I'm Karen Jefford, and this is the 7+1 Framework Series. Step 6, corporate social responsibility, environmental social governance, and social value. This step is about translation. Charities and corporates are often trying to do similar things, but we absolutely know that you're speaking different languages. And when that happens, opportunities are getting missed. You may have heard those terms as CSR, ESG, social value. Most charities have heard these terms, but they can often feel unclear or even slightly intimidating. Like something you should understand, but they aren't always confident in explaining. And that creates distance because the work is already happening. Both of you are doing it. It's just not always being communicated in the right way. So in this step, we work on improving your confidence to understand those terms, CSR, ESG, social value. But I want you to ask yourself a question. Do you feel confident explaining your impact in a way a corporate understands? And if not, this step is absolutely for you, and it forms part of this framework. Alessandro, from your perception or your point of view, why does this language create confusion when actually they all want to achieve that impact? They all want to evidence the value, the social value. Why is there that language barrier?
You use two very important words. One is perception, the other one point of view. So the only ways to use something is by making the invisible or what we take for granted visible. So when something becomes visible, it also becomes like usable and changeable. And once something is changeable, we can also adapt to the other person. So why I'm explaining this? Because many times when we don't feel what the other person is saying, for example, when people use the acronym CSR, ESG, social value, for many people, that doesn't actually mean anything. Mm-hmm. So we want to think, how can I make something invisible, visible, that the other person understand but also feel, in order to make what I'm sharing usable and changeable, and over time also adaptable. So in terms of perception, this is the main reason why does this language create confusion in the other person. Let me give you like a practical example. And this is explained from a psychological point of view. Each of us usually categorize what the other person is saying, and we put it into a category. So for example, if a charity has, we are looking for CSR opportunities, they might categorize it as a corporate jargon, probably not really for us, or something complex. The second is how we gonna interpret. Here comes like the perception, your question. So now the brain asks, what does this mean for me? If a categorization was weak or something like risky, interpretation become distorted. They want us to fit, for example, in their structure. And finally is the decision, or in terms of action or inaction. So based on the interpretation above, or based on the perception, inaction could looks like not replying to this opportunity. So just to recap, sometimes the other person does not act because they don't feel what you are sharing. And when you help the other person to categorize what you are sharing from something positive for them, they interpret what you are saying in something that they can also use, change, and adapt, and finally take the decision. This is from a psychological point of view, the main reason why most of our language create the confusion, and we end up into inaction rather than action. It's a very complex concept. If you have any particular question, Karen, about this, my interpretation, my perception, I'm very, very happy to expand any key point.
Alessandro, I think you pick up on a valid point. It's about people don't act because they haven't understood the interpretation of that engagement or that storytelling. And we talk about that, in the early steps of the framework. And I think often CSR, ESG is sometimes seen as a tick box exercise. And what this step does is absolutely move away from a tick box exercise, and actually to leverage the skills that they've already got, leverage their resources they've got, or leverage their assets they've got, to make sure that the charities are going to talk to corporates in a language that they understand. And actually the charities are going hand in hand with solutions. Just like charities have got a challenge to raise their profile, evidence their impact, generate more income, similarly, organizations are having to do their own version of that as well. So actually, it's about us providing the charity sector with the language, the confidence, removing those barriers and being able to interpret the needs of the corporate organizations and going to the table with a solution. So you've absolutely, articulated that and understood exactly the challenge that the sector has. So it's making sure that the motives in both parties are aligned.
And many, many people, like psychologically, they ask to the question, maybe consciously or unconsciously, what does this mean for me? What can I get from this? It's not always like money, can be other types of resources, but all of us ask that question. If you're not able to give the answer to the other person, that is the reason why inaction is much more common than the action. So help them, and again, this goes back to the empathic marketing. How can I put myself in the shoes of the other person in order to really understand how can I craft a message that is not just understood, but also felt by the person? And that is where you move the needle to action, where other people, for example, corporation, want to be part of your mission rather than see you as someone asking an extra activity to do.
Yeah. This step is absolutely about collaboration, that there's something in it for both of you. And when you're both aligned, you're both thinking the same, then you're building a partnership that isn't a quick fix, that actually you're building the longevity of it. So, we'll equip charities with an understanding of how corporates are thinking. And when charities can show up more clearly and more confidently, that's how we create equal partnerships.